Hello everybody, welcome to a journey down memory lane. Advanced Dungeons and Dragons 2nd edition. Welcome to the Twilight Zone, where we talk about things that I've said I'm talking about at some point, but I have only just started to sort of do that recently. Anyway, this is going to prove to be interesting. I have way too many notes. For those of you who are wondering, what have I got to say about it? Probably way too much, but bear with me. I'm going to put up a poll. I suggest you grab some food, some drink, get comfortable, because I have way too much to say, as I said. Okay. Well, we know what we're getting into. Advanced Dungeons and Dragons 2nd Ed edition, which means we're definitely going to be talking about tacos. Okay, let's go that route, shall we? We're going to go into this pretty quickly, people. I have another live stream to do in about 2 hours, so it'll be interesting to see if I can actually get it all done. Okay. Where's the button? Hi, welcome to How to RPG. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, but not just Dungeons and Dragons. I want to talk about advanced Dungeons and Dragons, because that's the topic for today. We're actually going to cover the Player's Handbook for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons 2nd Ed edition. This is a review, and I want to say just ahead of time that a patron and subscriber, Dan, was very kind and sent me this very familiar old friend that I gave away like a fool. I should never have given the book away, and I've had to get another copy. This is a review of the Player's Handbook for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons 2nd Ed edition. Not first, but 2nd Ed edition, with my honest opinion of the pros and cons. And there are, of course, pros and cons to a book like this. So very slowly and carefully, I am going to page my way through this, because there's a lot. There's far more than I was expecting. I had forgotten just how large the book was as we transition from 1st Ed edition over to 2nd Ed edition. So yes, first thing you'll notice is there's a lot of advertising in this book. We'll get back to that. All right. Okay, so as I thumb through this, this is a robust book of Dungeons and Dragons rules, first off. The Player's Handbook was published by TSR and designed by David Zeb Cook, and there's a lot of other people involved in the creation of this book. This book indicates a major shift in how the Player's Handbook was going to be presented to the public from what we had seen in the past. There are 320 pages in the book, which is significantly larger than past publications. The book spine was glue and stitch bound to ensure it survives many years, which is not bad. I'm really glad to see this. The pages are a semi-gloss to gloss finish in white, which means it's a highly detailed but also high quality book. The colour cover artwork is appropriate and awesome, with a barbarian smashing a door apart and the rest of the party behind him. The interior artwork is a wide range of beautiful and evocative depictions. The illustrations are from professional artists that work in classical mediums such as oil and acrylic. Like any great reference book, it has an excellent table of contents and index. Would you believe it? The glossary has been placed near the beginning of the book, which is smart. There's a step-by-step player character generation page, which attempts to make the process quicker and easier to understand, but doesn't quite succeed because the system is still complex. The abilities are explained adequately, but some information has been removed, I noticed, and charisma has been slightly changed to exclude physical attraction, and there may be a few other things that I might have missed that have been removed as well. Ability scores and modifiers work very differently to the modern game, and instead you have a large range of very specific benefits based on the ability score or the modifier that you have. The variety of playable races is still quite small. You still only have human, elf, dwarf, halfling, gnome, and half-elf. There are more classes in this book than there have ever been. You get the warrior, fighter, paladin. You get the ranger, wizard, mage, illusionist, priest, cleric, druid, rogue, thief, and bard, which is quite significant as an improvement on a book like this. The classes still have a lot of the important features that they have had at the beginning and creation of the game that has been lost over time. So in this book you will see things like followers and strongholds, and also a lot of utility function that has sort of been missed. Multiclassing has become less restrictive and a bit simpler to deal with. Fortunately, male and female characters are treated the same way with regards to benefits, penalties, and restrictions. Some of these penalties and restrictions and benefits were different for male and female in the past, and they no longer seem to exist. Smart move. Different experience point requirements for character advancement is retained for all the classes, obviously to keep balance in the game, but I'm still not a fan of it. Alignment has a lot of space dedicated to explaining the concept or the concepts of it, and it has excellent advice around alignment. But I do question the real value in building out a role-playing game category or tag name, because really it's more like a descriptor rather than a straitjacket, and often a lot of people get that confused, but they do explain a lot of that stuff in the book. Proficiencies in weapons, tools, and skills is extensive, as you might have noticed, but also optional, which is kind of strange. With so much work being put into it, why would you make it optional? The equipment section offers so much more of everything compared to a modern version of Dungeons & Dragons. I was really impressed. But there is still greater complexity in the encumbrance tables and the movement rates. If you are unfamiliar with encumbrance and movement rates, they do exist here in this game. A remarkable amount of space and effort has been put into explaining magic as well. There is a very general rundown on experience points awarded to a group, but also to individuals, and if you are trained. But I would still say there's a problem when you still refer people to the Dungeon Master Guide for the specifics rather than, like a lot of the stuff is so general in nature that maybe they didn't need to go into quite so much detail and they could have just put it somewhere else, which is just in the Dungeon Master Guide. Combat is by far one of the best chapters in the book, in my opinion. It has specifics, and no longer is it open to interpretation. So you get a lot of the stuff that you need to understand how to play the game. The infamous THAC0 mechanic raises its head to confuse some people, like myself. I still struggle with the concept of THAC0, even though essentially it is reversed armor class. Many of the game mechanic tables are slightly clearer, but still retain complexity with the percentage values and additional information that is offered from this game system. The treasure chapter briefly covers magic items, armor, potions, rings, wands, artifacts, but I have to say I think it's mostly pointless in a book like this, where you're only just going over the general concept. The guide on encounters for players is refreshing as far as I'm concerned, with it covering surprise, encounter distance, avoiding battles, talking to NPCs or non-player characters, waiting for a response, and when to fight. It's great advice. The subtle difference between something like a hireling, a follower, henchman is clearly defined and detailed in this book, and there is extensive information on the player character's obligations, which I'm so glad to see. Sadly, it is missing from modern Dungeons & Dragons, but it's in this book. The limits of vision, visibility, and range, light sources, infrared vision, and even the use of a mirror is discussed in this game. Game time, race movement or your character movement, movement types like running, swimming, climbing are all discussed, and it walks you through it quite well. It's clearly defined. Now, the book, I would say, is dominated by spell descriptions, as you might expect. There is a lot of information on spell casting, and it's pretty standard in any role-playing game book, or even, Dungeons and Dragons. It's always kind of been that way. There's a lot of spells and so forth, and so there's going to wind up being quite a significant chapter or section of the book. Almost half the book is just spells. Now, much to my surprise, a separate spell name index is included. I don't think I've ever seen something like this other than this book, as well as the general index. So there's two indexes, one for spells and one for general information. The text in the book is no longer small, but a reasonable size, thankfully. The appendix consists of character classes and ability score tables, which would have been better, I believe, in the character class chapter or the ability chapter, where that information is actually being presented. Why put it in the appendix? It doesn't make sense to me. Unless, of course, they're intended to be optional. The blank pages in the front and back of the book are finally removed. They no longer exist. They have been replaced with something else. Dungeons and Dragons advertising. Did we really need that? I don't know that we did, but at least it's not a blank page, right? The book's material and information is really well organized, and I would say this is one of the best books out there, even with if you're not fond of red, I like the red headers and definitely when they distinguish the different chapters and appendix in red, and the text size and its layout and how it's presented. And they have the benefit of modern technology here. Obviously, it's not the same sort of thing as what Gary Gygax had to contend with when he was first putting out his book. So there's no fair comparison. But yeah, it's really great to see how well the book came out. I'm amazed by the improvements in presentation from the early advanced Dungeons & Dragons Player's Handbook. And the difference is, I suppose you would say it's about a decade, but a lot of things can change in a decade. Now, I can't help but notice that this handbook is missing something or a lot. And I suspect it's the input of Gary Gygax and the carryover from Dave Arneson of his contributions to the game system that have sort of been lost here. You'll notice a lot of the spells in this book are very familiar. They are just reformatted, re-laid out. Often you'll find that they work pretty much the same way. They may have a little bit more information on them, but often it's just the text has been enlarged so you can actually read it without using a magnifying glass. There's also an aspect to this book that sort of suggests that we are seeing a book presented from people who didn't shepherd or create the game initially, but are sort of like stewards of the game, and so they're trying to do their very best to present it. But again, I also feel like there is some acknowledgement of Gary Gygax's and others' contribution. Dave Arneson is not mentioned at all, which I find a little bit frustrating. But there is also sort of elements that Gary would put in here. I would say some of them are good and some of them are bad, but they are now missing from this book. They have been, I suppose, for that time, sanitized in such a way as to make sure that nobody feels alienated or annoyed in some way. Again, it's still an amazing book. And as you can see, it just keeps going on and on, unless, of course, I'm just turning the pages too slowly. What I would like to say is a big, huge thank you to Dan. As I said, he is a patron and a subscriber, and he supported me for years. He is probably the person who has contributed the most and been with me the longest out of everybody else who has ever been on Patreon and actually followed my channel. He goes right back, even when he was never playing the game because he just couldn't get a game together. So huge thank you to Dan. I really do appreciate it. So I'm hoping that this review was useful to you. You do not need to agree with what I have to say. My opinion is just my opinion. This is what I had to say about the book. So thank you to my patrons. Thank you to Dan. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. Okay. All right, let's go over to chat. Today I have limited time. I have about 40 minutes and then I will have to go. No matter what, I will have to leave. So, yeah, throw your questions at me now while you can. Let's talk about this book because, you know, the chances are that this is the right time to talk about it. Since I have so many topics on my channel right now, it's not really like one of those situations where you can just talk about whatever you like in the chat sometimes, because I'm so focused on the topic for that live stream. So now, hello, how's it going, Milton Knowles? How are you? The Insane Witch King. Critical Roles on later today, I think. And good morning. Yes, Critical Role will be on. We have a live stream on Wally DM's channel, which I will actually post up in a second so that you can see it. I'm going to check the poll a little bit later. How's it going, Big Kid? Big Kid is also a patron. If I don't call your name out and you are currently a patron, please let me know so that I can sort something out around that. I do occasionally miss people. How's it going, Big Kid? So I'm almost curious about how old systems play. Is it just nostalgia, or is there something that made them more engaging as an experience? So to answer your question first, Big Kid, there are aspects to these classes and to the game system that ultimately probably didn't need to be there. You know, they added a level of complexity which made the game more of a simulation, and there was no need or requirement at all to use every single role. But I can tell you now that the loss of followers, hirelings, and henchmen, which are actually very different, when you read through the book and you look at how they are defined, and you look at the original AD&D First Ed edition, they are defined very differently. And so what they've tried to do is try to present it in such a way that it's clear that the three are distinct entities. Now, you could call them something else, but how they function is different. Does that make sense? So yeah, that's what I would say. You're going to see me redesigning modern fantasy or Dungeons and Dragons 5e, because I see they have released Unearthed Arcana for the classes and a whole bunch of other things. I think, what was it, some epic boons or whatever. I'm going to redesign all that stuff myself, and I'm going to take a lot of the old stuff and put it into the classes, and I'm going to use it for Mazes and Monstrosities, the role-playing game that I've been putting together, which is essentially just a retro clone where I just stripped away everything I didn't think was necessary. And you should be able to port over what we build in the future based off older D&D and new D&D. You should be able to port it over into your 5e games, or potentially a lot of your other systems if you're playing 3.5 or even Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, if you wanted to do that. But I feel like people who are used to playing Advanced Dungeons and Dragons aren't ready to go and play a version that's been made by me. So we'll see how that goes. But it's going to happen because my group are ready to do their own thing. So we're going to do that. Dungeons and Chronics. Hello, how are you, Dungeons and Chronics? Hello, Julius, how are you? Ancient Dragon is here. Wow. We've got a few people to hear today. Welcome. Hello there, everyone. Just flying by, and that's fine. If you can only drop in, then just drop in. I totally understand. So let me grab the link before I forget to the live stream I'm doing today. We're going to be talking about various monsters on Wally DM's channel. For those of you who don't know who is going to appear there, there's been a change. It was supposed to be Wally DM, HowtoRPG, which is me, AJ Pickett, Dungeon Class, which is Mark, and we were going to have Indostructo Boy, but unfortunately Indostructo Boy or Taryn is unwell, and we are now going to be having Steely Sam. I don't know if you know Steely Sam, but he does monster lore, and since we are talking about monster lore, or should I say how to use your monsters in the game, whatever game you're playing, it would be highly appropriate to have an individual like that here. It'll also be the first time that Steely Sam and AJ Pickett have met each other, and they've been wanting to meet each other for a long time. So I've dropped the link in so you can see it, and feel free to join us in about an hour and a half, roughly, something like that. Now, where are we? Major Laser, how are you, Major Laser? This was the Ed edition that not only introduced me to D&D, but also to RPGs. So, Major Laser, this is also the Ed edition that introduced me to Dungeons & Dragons. Because I remember going into the bookstore and I saw the new version 3, and I didn't like the artwork on it. It looked like some sort of book. It was like artwork that made it look like a book, and I didn't care for that. But what I did care for was the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Ed edition artwork. And when I picked up the book and I started going through the book and looking at the artwork, I was drawn to the artwork. Not the rule system, not the information in it at all, but the art. So I was judging a book by its cover. How's that sound? Definitely very, very shallow in terms of my interpretation. I struggled to understand the rules when I tried to read them, and I never really truly understood how to play it properly. And I think when I used the rules, we used portions of it and a board game combined when I was playing with my friends. I think there were 3 of us who used to play, yes, 3. There were 3 of us who used to play on a Friday, drinking ginger beer, alcoholic ginger beer, and because we didn't have anything else to do. Like geeks and nerds tend to do sometimes. Yeah? Hello, Prepare, Cook and Survive. How are you? I got dice now, thanks. Great. So, Julius, you'll be all ready for character creation next week when we build a priest for Shadow Dark RPG, which was like building the wizard was a lot of fun. It worked out so much better than I had hoped by changing the format a little bit, and it was just such a slight change and made all the difference. So I'm looking forward to it. What it does open the question to is there a point or a time where I will do how to build a Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Ed edition character? I think that's certainly possible. I have currently conned Wally DM into teaching me how to build a character for basic or bet me Dungeons and Dragons. So that is definitely on the cards as part of a Dungeon Master, or should I say a Game Master Roundtable live stream. We're going to do that with a couple of people from different channels. I believe me, Wally and AJ are already signed up. We just need to get 2 more, and it'll be a party. It'll be a party as we make characters together. Okay, what else have we got here? I think I've got everybody. Everybody is saying hi to each other, I can see. I'm testing my old wings. Are you, Ancient Dragon? You testing your old wings? Man, I feel it. I know what you're talking about. Feeling the move them wings around. So Prepare, Cook and Survive. How are you doing? So what have you got here? I got Morkbork arriving Saturday. The art and the theme is what has drawn me to it. Okay. All right. So I'm really glad to hear that. I'm happy to hear that Morkbork is making its way to you. Hopefully you get a chance to play it and you get people who are willing to be on board. Morkbork is quite brutal. Death is common. I haven't played the system, but I am aware. Hello, Justin. How are you? How's it going? JP, Jean-Paul. Hello, Jean-Paul is one of my mates. He's part of my home group. How are you? Back Me live stream. Yes, Back Me live stream in about a month from now, after my holidays. We're going to come back and we're going to do a Back Me build. And what do you know? Wally DM is here. Dude, I don't have your book close by. I thought you'd be busy at work, running around with your head popping off and all the rest. Okay, what do you got here, JP? Hi, Fred. D&D 2E was my first introduction to the RPG scene many years ago. It's still my favourite edition, unless you were a monk. Yes, playing a monk was not such a great... And I don't think playing a monk in any version of the game has ever been that much fun. I think because they completely missed the point. Having had some experience in the martial arts, I'm not saying I'm a monk. I'm saying that's really what it should have been called. Instead of calling it monk, just call it martial artist. That's really what it is. You know, it's just that. So and as JP knows, I'm building classes for our group to be able to play that should be able to mesh with 5e or the system that I have stripped right down to its bare bones. So we'll be doing that no matter what. Even if nobody cares for it, it's going to happen. It's just going to take me a little while. So what do you got here? Wally, I would grab your book now if I could, but yeah, it's going to be disruptive. So I'll they know where you are because I pointed them in the direction of the live stream anyway, that we're doing in about an hour and a half. Justin, I had that book too. It was a trip looking at it a few months ago. Yeah, such a different game. Yes, yeah, it does. It does look like such a different game. But I would like to contend that Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, Back Me Dungeons and Dragons, even something like, I guess, First Ed Edition, even 4E and 3.5, they all have the same sort of things that hold the game together, that define it. One, you have funny dice. Two, you have 6 abilities: strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. That's never changed. You still have a dice roll for making ability checks or skill checks. Skill checks came later, but a skill check is just an extension of the ability check. They've always been there in some way. There's always been an attack roll of some kind. Whether you used a table or you used a ascending armor class, or descending armor class, Thaco, or should I say tack? Let's go have let's have a tack. No, I'm not going to be able to say it. I'm going to laugh too much. So it doesn't matter. So a lot of those things have always been there. Even the saving throw, they might have looked a little bit different, but they've extended right back to the very beginning of the game, and they still they still sort of find their way into the versions that we have in the past and now. They're still there. So yeah, I still feel like the game is really just been an extension as they've tried to figure out what they need to do with it. And I'm not going to say good things about what they're doing with what is it, 1D&D or 5e revised. I think that's a hot mess myself. I think they've lost me already. And they're not even to do with the open game license, just the rules, just the stuff that they're trying to do. Most of the stuff that they've put forward that I liked, they don't seem to be retaining. So that's kind of strange for me. Anyway. Yeah, that's it. Okay. The backwards hand on the back. The backwards hand on the back. Now, I'm just trying to remember what you're trying to refer to. I can't remember exactly what you're saying there, Justin. But yeah. What do you got here? Have you played much of World Ending? It's morbid, but also looks like it could be hilarious. I have no idea what we're talking about now. We're off on a different tangent. So let's get real. This book here made a huge difference to me because my first introduction to Dungeons and Dragons was my friends talking about funny dice and this game called Dungeons and Dragons, and I really didn't care. And when they said, Fred, you'd be interested into this because you're into fantasy, I said, sounds stupid to me, I'm not interested, go away. Okay, that was my first response. It was only when I was at university and I found this book and the monster manual, the monstrous manual, should I say. It was actually the monstrous manual. And I also picked up the Dungeon Master Guide. We're going to go over the Dungeon Master Guide for Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Ed edition in the future, but it'll be a few weeks before that happens. We're definitely going to go over them though, so you don't have to worry about that. So this was sort of the beginning for me. I didn't get a chance to actually play the game for so long. Like, it was years after I bought the book. It might have been 10 years after I had purchased these books that I finally got to play the game. And I can't remember exactly how old. I was probably in my late 20s when I finally got a chance. I'd been mucking around with other board games such as Hero Quest and Dungeons and Dragons, the board game, and Space Crusade and things like that, because that were easy for me to understand. I wouldn't say that I was the brightest individual under the sun. Still wouldn't say that I am. And then things like Fighting Fantasy, the Pick a Path books by Ian Livingston and Steve Jackson. I would consume those. I was the book stacker. My mum would get upset because I would stack books. And one of the books that I would stack was this, because I'd go through this, still desperately trying to figure out how to use it as I was a teenager. And I still could not figure it out. Not to mention, I could never get anybody to play this game because it was so complicated. So yes, it was a hard push at times. Yeah, it has been a very long time since the early 90s. Yeah, it's a bit frightening to think that was 30 years ago. Holy Toledo, 30 years ago. Yeah, and yes, I have to say the artwork. Kamal, how's it going? I have to say the artwork was always wonderful, and I'm not so. I wouldn't say that the artwork nowadays in 5e is bad, but it's just not the same as. It just doesn't feel the same. I feel like there's more of a raw nature to it with Advanced Dungeons and Dragons 2nd Ed edition, and I guess even the artwork in 3E was kind of stylized a bit too much. It felt more like it was a bit more of a cartoon rather than I was looking at something I cared about. Because if you've ever read the Fighting Fantasy art book, Fighting Fantasy Pick a Path books, that is some hardcore artwork in there. Black and white, line drawing, high detail, and just horrific. Like, some of the artwork was just horrific. Of course, as a teenager, I love that stuff. And it felt like, okay, this is something that's exciting. This isn't just a make-believe thing. This is the book that kind of made you feel like, oh, maybe there's a possibility of doing this for real. But there's no risk, of course, of injury too, which is quite nice. You don't have to worry about dying. What do you got here, Justin? Looking at the cover and the hand that is not holding the axe. Oh, right. Oh, the hand. Yes. I see what you mean. It's upside down. Yes, that's right. Of the barbarian, the hand upside down. Yes, there's a little bit of there's something weird going on there. Not quite right, isn't it? Yes, backwards for sure. Oh dear. Is this... Now, let me see if I get this name right. Is it Andre? Andre. What do you think about the return of Vecna? Greetings from Sweden. Well, Vecna, like everybody's been returning. We've had Strahd return. We've had Vecna's coming back. We've had a lot of various individuals that have cropped up over history. I guess for me, it would be nice if they created a completely new villain. If it would be nice if our design team at Wizards of the Coast felt comfortable enough that they didn't need to continually remake the same thing, because they're really kind of resting on their laurels right now. Whereas when you think about what was happening with Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition, but also before that, Vecna and the Obelisks, yes, I am aware of what you're talking about. I understand what you're saying. I'm glad for Vecna to come back, but I still would like them to have created some new villains that we had not seen before. They've kind of done that. But they haven't really sort of knuckled down and decided, we're creative enough and confident enough that people would be interested in something new that we have never shown them before. And I just don't feel like they've done this. They still keep recycling stuff. You know, when you see the adventures, they are retitled, but often just recycled. Yeah, they are. So they are. You're right. So I have you. You're correct. Yeah, they're trying to cash in on nostalgia. It's easy marketing. There's no risk to them because people will actually go and check that stuff out, right? Of course, if you've got some of the older printings of these resources and supplements from Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 1st edition, 2nd edition, or 3.5, you may not bother with their stuff if they don't make a decent product. And this is where their problem lies. It's the same thing with Spelljammer. They never really... Did they ever come up with some completely new monsters in Spelljammer? Not really. And we do not count space guppies or space fish or space whales as new monsters. That's not acceptable. You have to do something new. Also, a follow on from Lost Mine of Found Delver. What got me started in D&D and Fred's channel? Well, okay. All right. Nice. I'm glad to hear that I am what got people started. So Justin, agreed. I think that's why I am so into Drakenheim and what it offers. It is familiar, but now, yeah, they're a bit OP in some areas. So one of the things you'll notice is Advanced Dungeons & Dragons and early Dungeons & Dragons gave you tools so that game masters and dungeon masters could make their own stuff. And I've been looking through the resources that I have that are more modern and even some of the older stuff, and they just do not give you enough tools to just make your own worlds. There is a tendency, unfortunately, for Wizards of the Coast to be concerned that if they were to make tools for you and give you a decent Dungeon Master Guide or Game Mastery, even Pathfinder does the same thing. They don't really give you everything you need to be able to create your own stuff. You are still left to wander the landscape to come up with this stuff for yourself. So that's why we've been making a lot of tables of 100 different things. Because I know that tables can be rolled randomly, but also they can be used as ideas. And as long as we don't make tables that are just a single word and there's a descriptor as well, it becomes useful to you. So, yeah. I don't know if will I ever do some live streaming on the game rules for D&D 2nd edition, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition. I do have like a live stream I do every week, right, that covers rules and I demonstrate with maps and miniatures. I don't know if I'll necessarily do that. I'm not going to write it off as a possibility, because if I have the books, it makes more sense to finally learn all the ins and outs of the game to be able to play it properly, rather than some sort of cannibalized mutant that I've created myself. So, yeah, I guess that's definitely on the cards in terms of what needs to happen for the future. I do have a lot of people who keep wanting me to promote Kickstarters, and I'm not going to do that. I keep telling these people, if you send me a physical product, I will review the product in a live stream, and there will eventually be an edited video. And that's it. But if you don't send a physical book or product to me, I'm not doing anything with it. So right now, I'm just working through my backlog and library that's on my shelf. Since a lot of it's sitting there doing nothing, I might as well present it to the world and talk about it. But it still takes... it took me 4 weeks to go over the Player's Handbook for Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition to be able to actually get me to a point where I was comfortable with talking about the book itself. So that's 4 weeks. I've still got to deal with Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, the Dungeon Master Guide for 2nd edition. And that I have no doubt that will definitely take me a full 4 weeks to actually process. And I'm actually starting to realize that I might have to slow down on the book reviews and start talking about some of the free fan content that's out there that you can go and just get for free by just downloading a PDF. So that might be in store for the future, by the way. Yeah, I want new stuff. I want Chris Perkins, Jeremy Crawford, and their team. They've got people who are capable of doing this. I want them to be comfortable enough, and I want the executives to let them be and just create new stuff. That's what I want them to try and do. Create something completely new that we haven't seen before, and try not to appropriate and steal too much from somebody else's culture, because it's just, I mean, rehashing Greek mythology is great. I loved Theros, but try to do something that somebody else, it isn't just taking somebody else's idea and repackaging it. Now, I know nothing is original, but at least give it a go. Everybody else in third-party publishing is. And Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition spawned so many different campaign types. Like, there were so many different campaign worlds that you could use. What do you got here, Prepare Cook? Do appreciate the live chats. They definitely help advance my DM abilities and help flesh out ideas. Also, the goofy characters and banter. Yes, one of my fun... You know how I keep saying when we do character building? Is build characters as part of your group, because it's more fun that way. I'm sure there are people who are more sort of... they're not an extrovert, they're an introvert, and so they prefer to build and do everything alone. But if you're playing a group game, you have to get together. And I like to think that when we do the character building live, and when we're doing it together, that it becomes a fun exercise, and that you get the idea. Right now, I want to make sure when I do this with my group that we build the characters together during our session 0. So that it's actually like a group activity where we get to hang out, goof off, and come up with some great ideas to combine our characters and link our character in with the game master or dungeon master, so their story or campaign will work, or should I say, not so much story but adventure, because it's not really a story. We're not doing a novel, okay? It's a goal. What is the goal? How do I work my character into that? But yes, yeah, I don't know how long it will take, but I suspect that we will eventually wind up building a character for Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition when I feel comfortable to do so. And I don't know when that'll happen, but I'm sure it will eventually in the future. But a lot of the mechanics from this book here, particularly this one and 1st edition, I will be porting over into any classes that I create for my own home game. So, and I will share all of that on Patreon, and I will share all that whole process and all of the strife that I go through in a live stream. You'll get it. When I come back from my holidays, we're going to tackle the fighter. And I'm really looking forward to the idea of reincorporating strongholds followers into the fighter as a class, and a lot of the other things that I think need to be there. I've had lots of discussions, I've got plenty of notes, so it's going to be a fun time to put that back into our game. I think a lot of us at this point, no matter what version of the game you're playing, you're probably doing a lot of home brewing. And one of the things you'll notice with Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition, but it also existed in 1st edition, is there's a lot of variant rules. I didn't mention that there's reference to a lot of variant rules. Now, particularly in I believe it is the combat section, if I can find the combat section, but also in, time and movement in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. They have an optional rule for jogging and running, of all things. And it's a huge section. And then what else did I have? Let's see if I can find the combat. Because and it's, of course, in grey, so that you can find it quickly and easily and fast. But there's a bunch of them. Let's have a look here. Let's see if I can find them. Oh, here we go. And they're the front loaded too. I'd forgotten about that. So here we go. So if you're looking through the rules, optional rule, weapon type and armor modifiers. Optional rule. And it gives you like a sort of a rundown how to do that. Breaking down, it's like slashing, piercing, bludgeoning. Now that's kind of level of complexity I don't personally want to have in my game, but I like the fact that it's there. Do you know what I mean? Because if people want that, then at least they've got it there, and they don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel and make it themselves. What I thought really interesting is they have group initiative, which is an optional rule. Optional rule, group initiative. Rather than individual initiative like we're used to, where everybody takes their turn one after the other, which is such a slow and ponderous way to run initiative. Prepare, cook, survive. Fred, how can I send you a book to review? Well, my YouTube channel has an email, and you just email me, and I will give you my address. Do you know what I mean? It's not a secret. Like if you go into the About section, if you're not on your phone, my email address is not a secret. It is publicly available to people. Okay, it is. I don't have that kind of barrier set up for myself. Heck, I don't know. Let's see if we can I get it in here? Yeah, in the About section. There's my email address. That's my email address. You just send me and said, Fred, this is what I want you to send to you and review. And if I say yes, I would be interested in reviewing it, send me the book. I'll give you my address, and you're away. Do you know what I mean? So that's not a problem. I'm happy to do that. Message on Discord. Yep, message on Discord. You can do a message on Discord, but just email me. I have an email address. There's a reason for it. So yes, but yeah, you'll probably see me doing one book review a month at some point rather than two. I've been doing two recently. I'm probably going to start talking about free. I want to put forward free stuff, and also too, if it's a PDF, it's harder for me to read, so they have to be short, like really short, 10 pages, 15 pages. Something that I can consume easily because I'm not in front of my computer all the time. In fact, the more time I spend in front of the computer, I actually get worse. My eyes get worse and weaker, and so that's not a good thing. At least I have a huge monitor now, and I can do it in 4K, so it's nice and clear and clean. But yeah, that's one of the hassles with doing the book reviews twice a month is I just don't have the time to dedicate to them. So I'm going to look at some smaller supplements that you might be more interested in. Yeah, there's another reason why I want to do free Dungeons and Chronics. I was talking about different systems that people have put together that are built on what you probably already know, and I wanted to put them forward because they deserve to get some time. I was looking on YouTube to see if I could find, has anybody talked about this free supplement? Has anybody talked about that free supplement? And I'm like, okay, almost none of them showed up on YouTube. If you type it into Google, you might find it. Sometimes it's a bit difficult, but you might find it. But there's nothing on YouTube about them. So I'm definitely going to go more into detail on stuff that is completely free for you. and I'm offering my own system, which is still in the first draft, for free on Patreon. You don't have to pay for Patreon. You can just download it for free, completely publicly available. And quite deliberate, because I want you to be able to build your own system off it. Might just take a little while for me to get you all the variant rules, that's all. Okay, I think, let's have a look at this poll. I think this might be a good time to finish up this poll and finish up this live stream and then come back, because I've got to go and talk about monsters very shortly. We're going to be talking about the Pegasus, the Skeleton, what was the other one? The Dryad and the Imp. Now, the reason I picked these, and me and Wally decided these were the ones to go for, because me and Wally picked them, we did it deliberately because they are not IP. They're not intellectual property. Nobody can own the Pegasus, the skeleton, the dryad, or the imp. They are open source. You know, they are mythology. You can't copyright mythology. Quite deliberate in my attempt to make that work that way, if you were wondering. So, do you see more? Do you want to see more Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Second Ed Edition on the channel? 78% said yes. That's a good number. So that means that I can do this topic and cover these things, and I will assure you, you will get more of it. I might even do a remastered review of the Monstrous Manual, or the Monster Manual for Second Ed Edition. Yeah, the Monstrous Manual, I could definitely do a remastered review of that, because the one I did was not very good. I don't think I did a very good job the first time I did it. So I could definitely remaster that one as well. And then, yeah, character creation might be a thing. I talk a lot of the information I pull from has come from this book, or Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Ed Edition. I pulled a lot of information from those books for making my video content. And I would say 5e, but really it was AD&D influencing 5e. Yeah. How's it going, Paul? How are you, Paul? Paul Cole. It's small, but my favourite part of the book is the wizard making the arcane sigil in the air. Fair enough. So if you are unaware, our Game Master Roundtable stuff, we almost always pull from mythology, older versions of D&D, new versions of D&D, Pathfinder, other role-playing games. AJ's right into Palladium books, and so he winds up pulling a lot of that stuff in there, and just bat crazy nut stuff from movies and other sources. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that today. It's going to be fun. And I haven't talked with Steely Sam for a really long time. I don't even know, have I released a lot of the videos with me and Steely Sam talking about stuff? I don't know if I have. Or maybe a couple of them, but probably not. You sent an email. I just heard my phone go off. So prepare, cook, and survive. I totally get what you've said. Yeah, that must be the email now. Okay, I'm going to end this poll and let it wind up. So yes, undecided 13%, no 4%, just watching 4%. So there's obviously a great huge chunk of you who are either still playing Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Second Ed Edition, or you want that content. I don't want to call it content. I want to call it, let's call it something else. It's such a frustrating word, content. What is that? Let's call it something else. Let's call it opinions, or I don't even call it material. What's material? Could be a piece of wood. It's ideas. We're presenting ideas. How's it going, Wally? It's been over a year since we had Steely Sam join us. Yes, it has been over a year. And it's taken me ages to get through that stuff. When he did sit down, and it's like, there are so many videos on my channel that I need to release, and I haven't done so. Yeah, classics for inspiration. I'm always up for the classics for inspiration too. Okay, so let me do this now. Since we're going this way anyway, you're going to be hanging out hopefully with me in about an hour. Okay, I'm back, and then I'm going to go. So, for me, I'm basing a lot of what I want to do with my game off this book and the First Ed Edition AD&D. A lot of it is going to be based off this. There are just ideas and concepts in there that I love so much. But since my buddy's here, please, if you are into puzzles, this is the book for you. Seriously, I don't believe that there is anybody who's done it better than Wally DM. And when he finally manages to do his next book, I'm sure it's going to be even better, which means that anybody who's third party trying to do puzzle books is shit out of luck. They just won't be able to keep up. Wally is probably blushing right now, but it's true. because I suggested some ideas for him, and I know it's going to do well. I'm not a professional publisher, but I know what I like. And since I also have hung out with this fellow a lot, Esper the Bard, and I've got Esper the Bard's book to review in the future, which is going to be happening hopefully over my holiday. I will get a chance to go through the entire thing. It is huge. It is a high quality book. Puts everybody to shame in terms of the kinds of things that they make. Puts them to shame. Both those books put people to shame. Yes, I will put the link in for the live stream right now. I put it at the beginning of the live stream, but I'll put it in now, okay? And there. Doosh. There you go. That's where I'll be in an hour, along with AJ Pickett, Wally DM, Dungeon Class, and hey, Steely Sam. You got Steely Sam. Getting Steely Sam to do anything with anybody is a hard task. I can tell you that now. He's he's a very shy individual, if you were unaware. Very, very shy. Anyway, I need to go. I want to say a huge thank you to all of my patrons. Thank you so much for your support. I want to thank Dan. And Dan, if you are watching this, I really do appreciate you sending the book to me, because one, it was your own personal book and you had to send it to me, and it cost you money to send it to me, and it took forever. And yes, there was a lot of concerns around damage around the book as well. So thank you so much. I want to thank everybody who's been part of the live stream today, in the comment section, answering the poll, or just watching or re-watching this live stream. I really do appreciate it. And I would also like to say thank you to the Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson for actually making the game happen, because otherwise I wouldn't have found it. So wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, the night, or the wee early morning, please look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.